We're going to find out who still gives a hoot about playing baseball out in the Western U.S. Join us on this bonus episode of the Indie Ball Report podcast. As was promised is now delivered. The bonus episode is here for all of you now. And the Rye guy is here. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good. Good to be back, man.
Were your 4th of July holiday festivities well?
Yeah, they were good. I don't know if they were worth missing the pod for, but don't tell Jackie that.
Good thing she doesn't listen to this show.
No way she does. Lord, she respects herself. Would I marry somebody who listens to this?
So what you're saying is I don't have a shot?
The hell does that even mean?
Well, the divorce eventually occurs.
Oh, my God. You're an idiot. With me? With me is what you meant.
I know. I would be pulling down.
I followed that. It took me a second. It felt... I caught it.
Just go back to your train magazines, buddy.
Oh, my
go back
God.
to the train magazines. Anyway, the show makes me want to be like Hemingway, which is to say, put a barrel in my mouth and pull the trigger. So... You know who else stuck a gun in their mouth and pulled the trigger? Potentially Kurt Cobain, but I was thinking about the Pioneer League because
he used his toes.
The Northern Colorado Owls. Are they or are they not still in the Pioneer League? Who's to say? If you ask NOCO, they are. If you ask the Pioneer League, they are not. If you ask the Sky Sox, they're still borrowing uniforms from the team they're playing. And if you ask 3 other unnamed teams in this league, they're just saying, hold on, I got to find the money for payroll. So this league's doing really well.
Yeah, there's a lot to make of this NOCO mess, huh? One, that the dueling press releases had me cracking up for sure. I'm glad you brought that up straight off the bat, because that was that was like classic bad indie ball owner moment, like to the last, being like, it's just for a little while, which is like literally, for anybody who's been down the rabbit hole with me and done the whole video, you have heard so many times the words of Jeff Katofsky being like, well, first of all, it's not my fault, and secondly, also, we'll be back on our trade. This is just a temporary arrangement. We got people helping us out. Dude, got it. What are you talking about? Like, it is crazy that guy is like, well, it's just they're helping us out for a little bit because we were put in a bad spot, which, by the way, he's still, if you didn't know, he's still angling that he was put in a bad spot because of the damned town of Windsor, who he feels has it out for him, who don't. They were just promised a ballpark back in like 2016, and look, that wasn't him, that was someone else, but he took over like in 2019. So, you know, it's been a minute. We've been hearing this is the year for years, and now Jeff Katofsky needs to stop talking to the media for a minute, please.
It is kind of funny though how like they put out the press release around like noon in the East, roughly. Actually, Barry, I can tell you because I'll just go right to my tweet because I have that up. It was just a little before 3:00 that I got the press release, opened it, screenshot, and then put it on Twitter there, and people seem to enjoy it. A couple bookmarks on that as well. Love that.
Yeah, baby.
For me. So we had that, and then the NOCO Owls, I seen they had put it up, and I jumped on that at 4:40. So it feels almost like, and do correct me if I'm wrong, someone with the team saw the league put out a press release and said, oh shit, we probably should put one out too to counteract this, as though the credibility is still there to believe it. And so over the course of the next 45 minutes, they crafted a master press release contradicting the league to a degree, then sending it out there, hoping beyond all hope that would work. So I guess the basic fill-in here, even though this is about a week removed from this now, nearly 10 days actually, the basic situation is going into the 1st of July, according to the Pioneer League, the Colorado Owls, Northern Colorado Owls, resigned from the league. As the official Pioneer League press release puts it today, meaning June 30th, the Pioneer League's board of directors accepted the resignation of the Northern Colorado Owls Baseball Club as a team in the league and has entered a new team, the Colorado Sky Sox, to complete the Owls 2025 season. It then essentially reaffirms that the pitching staff and what presumably is the players will just be transferred onto the Sky Sox franchise. It's very short. There's maybe 5-6 sentences in this whole press release, and most of them are quotes. What's even interesting is you have a quote from league president Mike Shapiro. I am so grateful and proud of the Owls players and coaches who have performed this season with the highest degree of professionalism. Under the leadership of manager Dimitri Young and pitching coach Ray King, they have conducted themselves with the utmost character and have honored the Pioneer League and the game of baseball. No mention of ownership or front office there, just explicitly mentioning players and coaches, whether that was deliberate or not. It is interesting nonetheless. Also, it appears the Sky Sox are going to be roommates with the Vibes, who themselves are doing just great off the pitch. That was the original press release we got. Then we go to the press release we get from NOCO, which said, update on the 2025 Northern Colorado Owls season, June 30th, 2025, for immediate release, Windsor, Colorado. Quote, we appreciate all the support this season and the past 3 years since we moved the team to Northern Colorado. The Owls have been our baby since 2004. When we bought the team and created the brand, our facilities this season continue to be in maintenance, and without a clear exact timetable, we would continue to have to find different temporary homes in Northern Colorado and changing our operations every series. We have made a deal with the Pioneer League to play the rest of our home series this season in Colorado Springs at the Vibe Stadium under the name Sky Sox, so the players get a proper locker room, training facility, and consistent stadium. We will evaluate the team and the future of professional baseball here in the off season, as we hope to get back on track and open our youth baseball academy this fall. The Owls name remains in the hands of the Future Legends ownership team and is expected to continue to be in use as the main brand in Northern Colorado. Thank you, and go Owls. That was their speed. So that does seem to be in conflict with each other, does it not?
It does. Though, I mean, we have many issues when it comes to the words of Jeff Kotowski. So, and I'm not saying he said the president, I'm saying he really wrote, I'm saying he must have had some sort of influence on the press release. There's a complicated dichotomy there where the employees of the team are paid by Future Legends, but it's his company. So it is, I guess, his company speaking on behalf of there. So probably Kotowski's involved. I mean, there is a chance that this was just done by a communications person. I don't know how hands-on Kotowski currently is with some things over there, because a lot of stuff's it's a precarious spot. There's receivership. He has his hands full legally, which should be nothing new for him. He's a lawyer, I'm sure a good one. There's a lot with that. I mean, I will, first of all, while we're talking quotes, start with a quick grievance upon the league statement, which is Shapiro shows up, gets a quote in there. And can you give me his quote real quick one more time?
If you hold the exact quote, I can't, but it essentially said, we thank the players and coaches of Northern Colorado for the professionals throughout the season.
Man, that is the weirdest way to say, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have let this go this long. We should have nipped this in the bud before the season started. We should have made some hard decisions beforehand, before we had to make a hard and very embarrassing decision, which negatively affected dozens of people and more, by the way, because now there's an awkward break. There's been a whole mess. There's a situation where the league could have gone in and said, hey, we're backing away from this in the offseason, gone specifically to the town of Windsor and said, hey, I think you understand what's happening here. We're going to need for our league back away from this for a moment. With safety issues, there's safety issues. There's so many reasons that this could have been fine. And say, we're going to need to, we'll handle the legal headache that will come with Kotowski which other leagues were fine to do. The USL was happy to do it. Cut them loose and then deal with it and leave a good relationship with Windsor saying, hey, like, we'll come on back when this thing is done. If that's what you would like, if not, whatever. Like, instead, dragging your feet. I know there's a personal relationship with Kotowski, it seems, at this point. I know they're at least personally pretty close with his boy over in Grand Junction running the team. So it seems like they just insisted on at every point trying to make the easy decision and turn a blind eye and focus on expansion when really they should have been shoring this up, because this was telegraphed for years. Like, I mean, I knew about it for over a year. This was being reported for years that this was a sketchy situation that wasn't going to work. So that's embarrassing. And I'm never one to say we need to reconsider someone's employment status. But goodness, whoever was making that decision, what are we doing? And talk about like a bad look. Like, this is a league that was on the up and up. We were talking about how they were moving up. They were making moves on the Frontier League. The pay was good. Guys were getting signed. They were moving all in the right direction. The Frontier League was struggling. They were succeeding where the Frontier League was struggling. Frontier League was overexpanding, shooting themselves in the foot left and right. Now the Frontier League has done the bare minimum of not having a franchise absolutely poop down their legs, and the Pioneer Leagues embarrass themselves.
Plus,
So
the Frontier also has kind of cleaned up Brockton a little bit. Fair League's got a better branding and fresh start there with an ownership group that seems to know what they're doing so far, even if the attendance hasn't followed quite yet. It's still an uphill battle there. But
that is definitely an
step in the right
situation
direction
out there. Yeah, everything I hear that is going the right way. And so I am a little confused, especially now, because what I'll tell you what I'm hearing from players right now is players in the Pioneer League are like, this is a mess. Because even if you're on a team, that's fine. I mean, Rocky Mountain's a dumpster fire. Great Falls is a dumpster fire. NOCO's obviously now Colorado Springs is a garbage fire. So, like, yeah, they're getting their numbers, they're getting wins, but like they've had 2 contract purchases so far this season.
Yeah,
because none of these numbers.
Falls, what that's worth.
Oh, I've heard things about Idaho Falls as well. Once we had talked about this week, I also did some digging. So you're not the only one hearing it. I'm hearing Rocky Mountain might be having troubles, which is interesting because Rocky Mountain, by the way, it should be noted, now I believe has the Vibes playing in that ballpark, NOCO playing in that ballpark, and I think college summer ball going on in that ballpark. It's worth asking questions about what's going on with a couple of the Montana teams. I haven't heard anything in particular, but they look sort of, I don't know, interesting. It's just this league seems, and we've already heard Ogden's in some financial distress. So we're talking about 2/3 of the league, really, half to 2/3. What I'm hearing from guys is they are like, the pay is good compared to other leagues, but I'm never going to get out of here. And what I'm hearing from guys in other leagues, other free agents, are like, okay, 2 guys in particular have said if they were given the option of going and just sort of, Rapsodo and posting videos online or going to the Pioneer League, they're probably staying home. And I've had other guys, it's about 50-50 on like Frontier League for less pay, Pioneer League for more pay. And those, for the most part, are guys who weren't really looking like they're going to get signed anyway. So like, this league is completely step backwards, and it's frustrating, man. I'm not sitting here dunking on them, being like, wow, idiots. I'm sitting here being like, you were so close and you just did get out of your own way. And like, I'll say the thing we did say for a while there, like, hey, you need to shore up your foundation before you build. And they didn't. And now here we are. It's like, yeah, man.
Yeah. A couple things.
Frustrating.
One, I can't find a summer college team at that ballpark. Admittedly,
yeah, I couldn't either, but I've heard from staffers that there is some college summer ball happening.
Okay, so perhaps it is. I just can't find it. So I want that out there. The second thing is, I think it's not much of a coincidence that we have all the Colorado teams in trouble. Colorado, I keep tripping over the way I'm saying that, but NOCO, obvious situation. Vibes, rumored situation. Grand Junction's never been the healthiest of areas here, with the possibility of going to Pueblo at any moment. I do wonder if, because I have heard that you have to pay minimum wage in Pioneer League, so that dictates something a little bit here. If that has some sort of influence on how this goes, but then I'm immediately confronted with both California teams don't seem to have any problem. And if it's a pay wage thing, you would think Colorado or the California teams would be right there with the Colorado teams.
Well, there goes back something that I think we discussed already, which is I think that in general, I think owners who are specifically getting into indie ball at this point are far more successful. This is not a rule, but I think it is a rule of thumb. I think the people who get in with a clear idea of what this is are more successful and more financially prepared than others. And frankly, I think the owners of the teams in California came in with a bigger finance base, and they're doing whatever the hell the crowd investing crap is, whatever. I don't buy any of it, but that's a different thing entirely. My own biases aside, I think that these owners who we're looking at here, a lot of them were people who barely, I mean, we talk about how like it's profitable to own a minor league team right now. That is new. I mean, these teams were not profitable. They were losing money. They were barely scraping by at best. Obviously, it was a different situation. This entire league of teams who could not scrape money together to stick an MLB or an MILB. And that's not shade. I hate that happened, but we can get a somewhat cleared financial picture from that. And then you see that now they're being asked to spend on all the stuff that goes with it. The players, the staffing, the workers' comp, the all
travel.
The extras, the travel that used to be covered. And it's just a different ballgame, man. Like you had a razor thin margin to begin with, and now you got that. I mean, good luck.
Yeah, and on the profitability point, I mean, I remember reading the Miles Wolf book, which if you want to, I definitely recommend reading it. He talks a lot about that too, where like in the 70s and 80s, these teams were dirt cheap. There's a reason why you go on like Baseball Reference and you look up, like just pick a random league, South Atlantic League, for example, and you'll see like 5 teams switch in any given year. It's because these teams were bought for dirt cheap. You could buy them for like $5,000 if you really wanted to. It was cheaper than buying a car in some cases, but you'd buy them. It'd be some local guy that owns like a car dealership and a restaurant. He'd have a bad year and he'd have to sell it because the team wouldn't make any money because 300 people would show up a night. That was how it worked for a while. And then eventually it changed in the 90s and 2000s and up to now, where it started becoming a lot more profitable. So it really is a new thing here. And a lot of these communities too, they just don't have the economic growth potential to really make it worthwhile to invest more or to stick it out more, because where is it going to come from? Like even a market like, say, the Utah teams or Utah team rather at the moment with just Ogden, you could point out and say like, yeah, you could say like, that's a market that should be growing. Salt Lake is starting to get more and more on the map. And let's be real, every city in Utah is essentially around Salt Lake in some way or another. They have one major highway that runs for everything. That's how this works. So you would say that should be growing as a market. But if they're not even growing, then what is? These are all towns that, quite frankly, they're major or mid-major cities in the region because there's not much in the region. And that's the problem. Like with the possible exception of, Oakland, obviously, and say Colorado Springs, where's the other major cities? Boise? Like that's the only other one I could really come up with. Idaho Falls isn't it? Missoula's like the line if you want to be generous to them. Great Falls? Like, come on here. Let's start to get serious. Even Grand Junction, Colorado isn't really exactly a thriving metropolis. So you start to run into these problems. I mean, Kalispell's kind of, sort of that, but I mean, that's really like they're powered by the national park. And
yeah,
it's not
relationship.
Exactly. And you don't have the population base. So it's different from a team like, say, New Jersey that is in a large population base. There's a lot of people around there. And it's more, we put this team in like the worst possible spot because that's the only place at a ballpark that would take us. And we signed a deal that we probably regret signing, but we don't have any better options at the moment. but there's at least a sense there where, okay, if we start to change things, there's people to get in here. With a lot of these Pioneer League teams, there's no people. And even the areas that are growing are not growing fast enough to outrun this problem. And so you talk about, looking to expand too quickly, not having the base and whatnot. And it feels like back in the old days, like the old Rebel League type things with the WHA, ABA, USFL, all of that, where they started getting really in the weeds financially. And so they just said, we got to expand. The expansion fee will patch the hole in the boat. And because you were just looking to expand quickly because you need the cash infusion, you kind of letting people you shouldn't have let in. That then created a whole nother problem and hurt the credibility of the league, which chased out sponsors, which then chased out other owners that said, hey, I can't work with this guy. They're too much of a wild card, which then created further need to expand, which that's diluted the pool of ownership more. And you're coming into the same situation now. Even if you want to take ownership groups out of consideration, which would be a major thing to take out of consideration, mind you, you're putting teams in too quickly and into situations that aren't good. Even looking at Yuba Sutter right now, as YOLO last year, their field situation wasn't good. You're playing day games in 100-degree heat. That's a bad setup. So you have that. Even Oakland, remember, they had to jump ship and go to Ramundi. Ramundi wasn't option 1. It was option 2, and it was like a last-ditch effort, really. And those were plans that at least there was no rush on. Presumably you took some time on them. So now you're in that same boat with existing markets. And like you said, none of these people really wanted to get in for indie ball, and only a handful of them have really figured out that, hey, this is how you got to do it, and you got to be willing to lose money. And a lot of them aren't ready to do that because a lot of them can't afford to do that.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I mean, first of all, if you're curious, let's grab the census outside of, or populations outside of the California teams. Biggest one, Colorado Springs, 488,000.
Okay, that's good.
Then Boise, 235.
That's not
Billings
bad.
is the only other city over 100,000. They're 120. From there, every other town is, I mean, between the high of 77,000 in Missoula to the low of 60,000 with Great Falls. And then there's Glacier, the Kalispell, that is the outlier of 30,000. Now, and really what it is what does population mean? I mean, there are tons of successful organizations that are in small population bases, but if you think of it as your potential market for any given night is anybody within 30 to 45 minutes of your ballpark. When that is a small number, that limits, that raises the bar for what your success rate has to be bringing people in order to break even. The idea of, I mean, say you need, if 2,000 is the number to break even, I don't know that I'm pulling that out of my ass. Then if, for instance, it's a lot easier to pull 2,000 in a town like Colorado Springs, give them benefit out here with almost 500,000 people than it is Kalispell with 30,000 people. That means, say, even let's push, say 1.5 times. If we want to extend out of Kalispell, give them a 45-minute drive, there is 45,000 people. If you're trying to get 2,000 a night at that beautiful ballpark, by the way, really nice feature on them over the past week. Shout out on that one. That was well done. You still need to bring in one in every 25 people who lives within easy driving distance every night. That's a tall task. I'm not saying that is the exact number they're dealing with, but for just to illustrate why it's important. And then what that does is, it not only is it to bring them in once, it's to make sure, one, that when you bring them in, they'll come back again, and certainly that they won't not come back again. Which brings me to my other point, which is, this is a larger indie ball issue. So I'm not pointing to the Pioneer League on it. In fact, it's a even minor league issue in certain leagues. But it is more important because the Pioneer League now has made themselves vulnerable to this. I just pointed out that you need to have a certain percentage of your, potentially small population come out. And then presumably you need them to come out multiple times. You need to make a repeat customer of them. It's really hard to make a repeat customer when the game is bad. And the Pioneer League is giving us like 2021 levels of bad games right now. And by that, I mean, not every game is bad, but the rate of bad baseball game is higher. I mean, just looking back through like recent scores here, we had, 14-4 is an egregious tonight. But if we go back to like Sunday, we had a 23-18 game in Idaho Falls. We had 17-7 between Grand Junction and Colorado Springs. The night before, I think we had a 20 spot as well, 20-0 Oakland over Rocky Mountain, 29-12 Grand Junction in Colorado. That's not a fun watch. Like, it's exciting. There's a lot of runs, but like, one, is it necessarily a fun watch? Maybe it depends on how they do pitching, it. Yeah, I mean, if there's 16 walks, it's a tough scene, which there was in Grand Junction, Colorado Springs the other night. Now, if you have a guy go 1 inning of 10 earned, that's a tough one. And you leave, thinking like, what the hell was that? Is this a legitimate pro baseball team that's worth my money to spend on? Or is this feeling a little amateurish? In which case, why would I spend if it's amateur? Literally, that's unpaid. So if it is a quality of baseball that feels amateurish, I'm not saying it is, because you and I are in the weeds, but if to the outside person, you look at this and go, what the hell is this? Like 29-12, it's 12-3 after 2 innings. It's 19-3 after 4. You're kind of sitting there like, all right. And keep in mind that happened, like these games happened multiple times this series. I mean, that was a double header. Game 1, I think that was a continuation maybe of a game, but there was a 15-3. They had a 3-game segment that was 29-12, 15-3, and then the like 23-8 or 17-7. Like, it's just what are we doing? What is this?
Yeah, I mean,
so you're rolling dice.
Yeah, there's a couple things there. One, you bring up the point on you might as well be amateur. You absolutely can make that work too. I'm looking through some of the markets here, and there's 3 alone for summer college ball that could work for just Colorado alone. There's another Independence Baseball League that's out by Boise. We want to go. There's nothing really in Montana, but there is one in Wyoming that's also Independence Ball. So, I mean, like, you could just jump to that. And honestly, the brand you've already established being an independent league, a partner league, however you want to do it, you could probably make that switch pretty easily. Secondly, it's a question to you before I get on to the point. How much higher do you think the operating expenses are in the Pioneer League versus the Frontier League?
Ooh.
Rough question here. Yeah. I don't have an answer, so I'm genuinely asking.
$250,000 to $500,000.
Okay. Because when you said that, how much you need to draw, and you just said 2,000, it jogged something in my memory, which was when Tri-City was going through their lease renewal and whether they were going to opt back into the Frontier League for another 3 years, which they wound up doing. And by the way, their 3-year deal with the Frontier League is up in 26. So we're going to have that conversation at some point, probably over the winter. But that's something that can be backburnered for now. And what I remember coming up in one of the many articles that I read about it was the team kept saying we needed a certain number to be financially viable. And so I went back to find it. And their number that they kept coming back with to be viable to play in the Frontier League based out of Troy, New York, was 3,000 fans a night on average. They needed to draw 3,000 fans to be viable. Now, even if we want to be generous and say they don't actually need 3, they could get by with, say, 2,500 a night. They're just saying 3 to, for the negotiation tactic of it all. If you need 25 in upstate New York, where the travel wasn't great the way the league was set up, but it was manageable, and they could get away with playing a lot of teams local to them and making their worst bus trip be like 1 or 2 out west, and then 1 or 2, a month up to Canada or so. If you add in that extra expense for the Pioneer League, where travel is going to be more, insurance is probably going to be more, expenses as a whole are going to be more, and presumably you're paying players equal, if not more money than the Frontier League is, you probably have to draw more than 2,500 people a game. So when you go back and you look through all those attendance numbers again, you start to realize, okay, maybe they need to draw like an honest 3,000 a game. Maybe they have to draw like 3,500 a game. And if you're not going to get that, then what exactly is the plan here? You know, like, again, back to the population base, if there's only, 75,000 people in town, you need to get 3,000 of them in every night, and you play during the week, and most people don't want to go during the week. So even if you have a sellout crowd and say an 8,000 seat stadium, of which I don't know how many of those exist out there, that doesn't make up for everything. If you need that 3,000 as an average, okay, cool. That makes up for like probably one series, if that, and that's betting on a sellout. That's not a safe bet. That's not accounting for weather. That's not accounting for other things that are in town. That's not accounting for people that are heading out of town. Clearly, there's not going to be too much tourism going in here. That population starts to suddenly shrink because already assume at least half of them weren't going to be interested in going no matter what. So all of a sudden, the 75,000 looks a lot more like 35 to 40,000. So now you need to draw in what, just over or just under 10% of the remaining audience on any given night. That's a tough number anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to do that? Especially when you went through a brand upheaval, going from, hey, look, we used to have like Dodger and Astro and Rockies prospects here too. Yeah, these guys, you don't really know any of them because they just came straight out NAIA ball, and maybe you'll recognize one or two guys, which is why they normally got to go for the bigger name manager, because that's at least somebody you can put on the outside of the stadium and try to draw people in with. But when you constantly change them out every year or two, it's kind of hard to get people to care and to keep coming back for that. And like you said just a second ago, when the product on the field just isn't entertaining and it's just bad baseball, you're going to get rid of the baseball people. You're going to get rid of the casuals who are like, oh, this really isn't that good. And then you're really, really betting on your teams being able to put an enjoyable non-baseball product out there between innings and throughout the game. And if you're budget strapped as is, you don't have the money in the budget for the promotions. You don't have money in the budget to do these things. And there's only so many like pool noodle races and foam fights that you can do before people go, this is kind of lame. Why am I doing this? And that's where we circle back to. So I just found it interesting with the amount that a Frontier League team supposedly needs compared to what's presumably a higher cost league is going to need. And they're not on the same page at all.
Yeah, so a couple notes there. I will point out the oddity that is also all California travels does seem to still be covered by the California teams, which is interesting. So those are flights every time.
Mm-hmm. That's expensive.
But that's an oddball. Yeah. So I've been in the weeds on the Pioneer League for a minute for multiple reasons, partially NOCO, partially classified, I'll say. But I've talked to, quick math, 9 mid to high level front office personnel from different teams / recently departed from certain teams, whatever. What I got from an operating cost perspective, the answers, the low end was operating cost for a year was about $960,000, the Pioneer League. The most answers ranged about $1.25 million, probably $1.25 million to $1.5 million. Had a couple sitting at 1.75 mil to 2 mil, debatably over 2. So that's what you're looking at. If we're saying it's,
and that's a 98 home game schedule.
Or yeah, I mean, if you're saying, yeah, I mean, you're needing to pull at least 26 grand like every night, and assuming it's probably about for a Pioneer League park, maybe 20 grand a night to run it, 15 if you're really scratching by. I mean, you're gonna have to pull at least say $40,000 in every night.
Yeah, I got 41.
And then if it's $15 a ticket, I mean, you're looking at 2/3 of the way between 2,000 and 3,000. Like, that's tough. That's back in the napkin math, generalizing for all the teams, but like, at least to have an idea of what we're talking about here. It's just, my unfortunate feeling, because I love the Pioneer League. I love the Pioneer League because it's strange, which I think is the most important thing in baseball, is my weird take. But also it is doing all the important baseball tasks, perhaps more than any other league that we look at, which is they are not only a league that is comfortable being low level, quote, low level, so that it's accessible to young players coming up who need opportunity and to showcase themselves. However, in addition to that, I should say, they are also serving wildly underserved communities. And that is why I emphasize them and I root for them in a way that I don't root for, not that I root against, but that I just don't have a rooting interest in the Atlantic League's success, the Frontier League success, any of that. I mean, Frontier League a little bit when you have communities like Pearl and all that out there, but like the American, sure hope Fargo makes it work, or else everyone's gonna have to go to, next town over. Like what, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't, it's not you'll have hockey still. Like this is the big thing in these towns. Like no shade to Fargo and the rest of them. Like I'm rooting for the Pioneer League because this was a big center of enterprise for them, and they got screwed. And honestly, it's easy enough for the owners, who I don't know if they had a clear picture of what indie ball was going to be financially or not, but it would have been easy enough for these owners to have said, that's it, I'm out, I'm done, I'm backing out of this. So I'm sure many of them were like, I'm already this invested in it, I got to stay in and do the indie ball thing. Sure, take some MLB money on the way, but like I do think there is part of it too. It's like, what are we going to bail in this town? What are we doing here? Like, and then you have people who chose to go out to like Kalispell and put a team in Kalispell. That's crazy. Good for them.
That's a very nice ballpark too.
Right. And they didn't half-ass the thing. They went for it. And they were like, we're going to bring like high level, facilities to this place. And that's awesome. And it's disheartening to see. And it's disheartening to say this now, is that I don't see a way that the Pioneer League is feasible in its current situation. I think the Pioneer League needs to have a hard conversation with themselves. I think they need to take a third of the league and they need to look into packing it up as teams. Like, if I'm honest, and this isn't me, and because it's, by the way, I'm Mr. Don't take baseball from small towns. I'm saying, like, I don't know if there's enough interest in these towns to support this. And if there is, it needs to be done in a more feasible way so that there's not a risk of a failing business in the middle of town, leaving them with an empty ballpark, which isn't okay. I think another third of these teams
are supporting them too. I mean, that's the other part of it too. When a team fails, there's more than just the players and the people employed by the team that are going out and that, oh man, we lost our thing. They all have sponsorship deals. There's agreements in place. You tie up a lot of money in putting an ad on a wall or throughout the stadium or whatever it might be. Your media advertising deal is a lot. And as we saw when Gastonia had their issue, you start leaving debts all over town. A lot of people, they start really struggling there.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard, I mean, just from the number of people that were afraid to talk to me about Gastonia because they had so much money wrapped up in it that they so desperately needed that money back that they didn't want to bury the guy who was screwing them over because they needed the money for their families and for their businesses. Like, I'm aware, like, that's a heavy thing, but there maybe the Pioneer League isn't the thing then. Maybe college summer ball is the thing for you because it at least removes so much of that money and it's still something that can be rallied around. You don't need to necessarily hit a professional standard when it comes to the facilities, when it comes to like where the players live, yada, yada. And then take the next 2/3 of the league and have some conversations. Are we sticking together? Or do we want to take the middle third of this league, who I think needs to have a severe business remodel, and trying to, like, buoy them with the success of the top third and, maintaining themselves as a league, and then maybe trying to bring in some filler markets that will ease travel? Or is it that maybe that third needs to go to another league? We'll talk about the Western Association a little bit and our own feelings on that. And then what do you do with the top third then? 4 teams does not a league make. So where do they go? They know they need to maintain something. Maybe they need to combine with somebody, but some more conversation need to be had. And the reason I'm talking about it now is because what we just saw, I'm afraid, could be a microcosm for this league. We have said for over a year now, hey, there's a problem in the Pioneer League and we need to have some conversations about it to prevent it from hurting people. Now it's a year later and we see a team fold. We're hearing teams are bouncing checks. We're hearing teams are struggling to house players. We're hearing, teams are asking on LinkedIn, what do we do about workers' comp? And the signs are everywhere. This is a problem. And I'm concerned that once again, like with NOCO, we are going to see that we are going to go, this is a problem and we need to do something about this. And the Pioneer League will just continue as they do and act like everything's fine and be looking at expansion and saying all these and putting out all this messaging and, oh, we're doing home run derby on Saturday. Bro, are you paying bills on Saturday? That's what you need to lock in on. And that's not to dunk on the home run derby. I kind of like the concept, but it's just,
it's taking a bottle of water to a house fire.
I need to see that. I am afraid we are ignoring the next NOCO, and this NOCO is the league. And that's what worries me. What I hear from, to close the loop on what I've been hearing, because I haven't talked to more front office people, is that they're probably going out to California, which is probably going to ease some things so they can do more of a California pod of 4 teams out there. Modesto, presumably, maybe one more, likely one more. TBD what that one more is. Pueblo is still question mark because I think everybody agrees it's not really set up for what they're trying to do. But I mean, what are you going to do with NOCO? And then, you might say Modesto solves it. I mean, I think ideally if you have 4 teams, you can really limit your California travel. If you have 3 teams, one team has to be, traveling either to or from California at all times. And that really hurts. And you'd like to do a California division where you can justify having more teams, play each other in a little pod out there. That's something. And then from the ownership perspective, I'm hearing, and I have not heard, I will say I have not heard from multiple owners. I've heard from one owner and then people who are working with owners. There is just a scattering of what this is. I mean, some people, the most successful ones, certainly seem to see the writing on the wall here. They seem to know that there's an issue, but at least they're rolling okay, and they're going to keep rolling as best they can until something happens here. The bad ones are there's a couple at least who think that they might get back to affiliated. I don't know what they're
smoking. I mean, you're not getting that back. It's gone.
I can't help you if you think that. I don't know what to do for you. And then I think others are looking for solutions. They think there's still a revolutionary idea that's going to bail this out at the last second. I mean, I have heard from multiple people in organizations that we would love to be Banana Ball. And I get it. Unfortunately, I think they're missing a key thing, which is Banana Ball isn't just automatically successful. Just a PSA, because I've been following the story since the jump. I think people far too easily sleep on how trial and error Banana Ball was, and understanding that no matter what your Banana Ball is, whether it's literally it, which it can't be legally, or whether it's just your revolutionary marketing idea that's going to save your league.
Baseball.
Yeah, whatever it is that's going to high school musical, whatever. The talent's getting together to save the ball club, guys. It's not going to be, it's going to take time to develop. It's going to take time. It took a lot of filling the ballpark in Savannah. I always forget the name of it. With small crowds.
Stadium?
Grayson. Before this thing could fill an MLB ballpark. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of nailing it on the field and off the field and understanding who your market is and how to play to them. Because as somebody who went to a Banana Ball game with me this weekend, not only is it fun and it's haha and it's funny for the kids and there's some actual good ball players out there for the baseball fans, but also a lot of hip thrusting and muscles. Every team they make now seems to have more of a party animals vibe where there's very sleeveless and very jacked dudes playing and they're flexing a lot because they know that there is a certain sector of the market that they cannot sleep on because you only have so many people who are going to be down for silly baseball time. And there are some who they probably wouldn't reach, but because they're women or men who are more interested in hot looking dudes than baseball, they can grab them with that.
And it did seem like we had one of those as part of our group.
Yeah, we did. Shout out Gabby. And it just, it's things like that. It's learning. Like that was learned after the party animals thing. Like that was a late lesson that they figured out. Like there's any idea that they think they're going to have that changes this they need to understand it is if they nail it 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, sorry for the rant. It's just like, I so want them to be okay and succeed or just understand. I need them to not no code this. Do not no code this. Do not do it.
Yeah. Which we'll do
the call's coming from inside the house.
Yeah. We'll do a whole banana ball thing on the main show this week because I think it's worth its own conversation there. But just adding on to the fire there, going off of what the league said their average attendance was, per team, how they throw that. This is what an average any given team would have per night, which is just under 2,200. Going off of that roughly $41,000 number for what they would need to turn in profit per night, if they have an average crowd, each one of them going to be spending $19 in that ballpark. Every night, everyone in there got to hand over 20. So that way you could break even. That's not make money. That's break even number. To actually turn this. Yeah.
They have multiple teams that are like not actively updating their website. Look, Great Falls has always been like this, but Great Falls just hasn't updated their website since April. And
a lot of them don't have an online presence whatsoever either.
No, I understand that you're operating like pretty shoestring and yeah, and there's probably a perception of like we know where our fan base is, they're right here, we know how we're reaching them, Facebook, whatever the hell. But like there needs to be a view of like it needs to happen now. This needs to start now. You need to be firing shots now. You need to be emptying the clip. Like you're up against it. And I even encourage the successful, quote, successful teams to recognize the situation of if this league isn't successful, you're going to be on an island, dude. Like, hope you're cool with the American Association because that might be your only option, teams in Montana. Like, you need to be pushing. And there's the aspect, too, of like, the best thing that Bananas ever did, if we're going to continue to look at that, I'm sorry, I know people don't like that, but they are the most marketing successful thing out there, is even when they were just doing college summer ball, their merchandising was incredible. They got all their TikTok followers, and what they do to them, they pushed merch to them, they made money. You don't need to just merchandise sells every day. Your tickets sell 48 days. You can only sell 48 tickets to somebody, and that's if they're going to go out to 48 games. You can sell merch every day. Like, but you need to get eyes on it. How do you get eyes on it? Engaging social media. Some of them are doing a very good job of this. It's not across the board, but like I have no confidence after what happened with NoCo and the number of people who are aware of it and just let it ride that people are going to step up and handle this and not leave people holding the bag here. It's going to suck. Call me if you want. I'm available. Come out for half a year.
That's the thing, right? Like, it's the restructuring part that really gets me perked up on it, because the current setup obviously is not viable for the majority of this league. But I don't really know what the better option here is, because it's not necessarily like all of these successful teams are grouped together.
That's it. If you cut all the unsuccessful teams, the travel isn't realistic for the successful teams. So it's like, oh my God, what do we do?
Exactly. So like, how do you reconcile that? Because then I was like, oh, well, maybe you go ahead and this would be the time to try like a relegation thing where you're able to kind of dump the unsuccessful teams in like a lower tier league where they can get their shit together. And once it's put together, they could, in theory, be competitive enough to bounce on up and go to the top league. And then you just figure out a way to do the relegation part of it to dump teams back down. And in theory, like with a lot of like lower European league teams, sometimes relegation isn't that bad because you can take a year or two, refill the coffers, Now you actually have a bit of a budget to work with, and then you can make a push there. It's their version of a rebuilding year. So, it's not the worst thing, but again, then you're still stuck with the travel, and you're still stuck with the root cause of the problem, which is the business model is still fledgling, and the people involved are still not grasping that things have to fundamentally change. And now you throw in the extra wrinkle of losing some local rivalry and confusing people with the, wait, we went down, we went up, what's the deal here? Now, the average person just coming to spend a night at the ballpark doesn't care. But for that person, then, do you think like summer college is just better because it's going to save you a lot more money? Lord knows it will save you a lot of money. And if the quality of play doesn't drop off, to the point where it's unwatchable, sure, you got to shutter some things around the ballpark, but in theory, you could just, fortify the things that work and get your feet underneath you and then expand back out how you run your team. But in the interest of not losing teams and not removing pro baseball from communities, you have to try and find a way to make it work. And I just don't really know what business model that is. And like you mentioned the banana idea, and like the problem is there's not that much originality that is also practical at the same time. Everything is some version of another thing. Even the cosmic baseball bit is to a degree just banana ball with glow in the dark stuff. And like it's still cool, don't get me wrong. I still want to check it out and see how the two compare. But I'm also not, being confused like it's this entirely original thing. It's original enough to prevent the lawsuit from coming. So yeah, that's the other thing. It's like a lot of the original ideas, they're still held by the people that thought of them or by a company that bought them out for a lot of money. And both of those groups tend to be rather fiercely protective of their IPs. So they're not just going to let you rip them off. And even then, like, there are certain things just like one-off different bits. Like you mentioned how long it took them to start filling Grayson Stadium, getting people to buy in and whatnot. And that was after years of also testing it in Gastonia too, with the Grizzlies to some degree. So they had a test market to run it through first that you don't necessarily have in these individual other markets. First of all, you got to bet, do the people that are already here want this? And second thing you got to bet on is, will it get old after a while? Like, a lot of groups like it, and part of the reason it's popular is they start doing the world tour around the US and whatnot, and there's always something new and something different there. But if it's always in the same exact spot and it's like that all year, does it eventually just get kind of old? Because you're not going to have the same resources to think of all the different dances and whatnot. And if your problem currently is putting the product on the field, promoting the product, and having all the non-baseball stadium events be engaging and fun to an audience, because you don't have the money to fund those things, are you going to have the money to have all the props and choreographed things or fund whatever new exciting idea you have? My guess is probably not. And I guess is also you're not going to have the budget to pay these guys that are kind of understanding. I'm taking more money and more stability doing banana ball, cosmic ball, whatever it might be, in exchange for saying, I'm not going to get signed out of this league. I'm putting the pause button or the stop button on my dream of making the majors. And you got to pay guys pretty decently by baseball standards to give that up when they're like 23, 24, 25. And I don't know if these teams have that cash if they're struggling to make payroll right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I could go into the banana ball thing more. I mean, just talking about how difficult it is. I mean, I've seen the bananas in Philly. This time we saw the party animals against the
tailgaters.
Tailgaters. It was a good time.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun. However, we'll say the energy was not the same as the Bananas game. And, I think part of that's just the familiarity that will grow. But the part of it is like hard to replicate, man. It's even hard to replicate when you're the one replicating your own thing.
Yeah.
I
and
think
a smaller venue too.
Yep. And, it just points to how much you need to have right to do something. So there's that. There's also promotion relegation is an interesting concept. I mean, there's the aspect too in like European soccer, global soccer, of teams being penalty relegated essentially by messing up their finances. Do you need to put limitations on how much teams can spend even? I mean, there's like rules in European soccer that's like you only spend what you make, but how do you enforce that? I mean, that's mostly on player salaries. There's the idea, I mean, I thought of the idea of in the Pioneer League situation, what could work, you're afraid to divvy up the leagues into two levels because of the travel. Well, there's an option of maybe they play the same schedule still. However, the bottom teams and the top teams, they play each other, but they're in their own divisions. And if you're in the bottom league, who is presumably not as financially sound, you only play the top teams at home. The top teams have to travel to you at least the majority of the time. That saves some money, but that only works if there's more financial benefit to being in the top league, assuming you have more money, or else we're just pumping you to spend more. And for what? Because, I mean, you make more money in the top leagues in European soccer because there's TV deals. That's not the case here. So that kind of kills that. Like, it is a certain lack of options here. And part of that, what's frustrating is I understand the instinct to expand out of it, where, adding markets might be a solution because it further reduces travel and can bring in, the short-term income. And maybe that way you can reduce cost while bringing in that income, and then maybe things float. But it makes it even more infuriating that they chose to expand to California. And also, I mean, how many other markets are there right now that they can expand to other than like Cheyenne? So, which I would keep an eye on as well. And we've spent way too much time talking about the Pioneer League here, but I do think it's interesting. I do think, if you're wondering why we're talking about this so much, I mean, I think there is a possibility that in the next couple of years, we're facing down indie ball landscape that does not include the Pioneer League, at least not in this format. So I think it's worth discussing if you consider it's one of the four major indie leagues, and I think there are major red flags around it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what the key here is. They're the newest one, but they were coming on so strong, and then it just suddenly drops out because the floor was rotted. It's just there's a rug over the floor, and they've become so integral as part of just the ecosystem of, all right, so you're going to go play your summer college ball, you're going to play in the draft league, then you're going to go over to the Pioneer League, you're going to spend a couple years over there, and if you're pretty good there, then you'll probably either go to the Frontier League if we're not totally sold on you yet, or you may go to the American Association, where if you do really good there, either you'll get your contract signed or you'll get a chance to make slightly better money somewhere else in the association, or go to the Atlantic League and get the better contract that you're going to get among indie ball. And the same thing true with the Frontier League. It's just an extra detour on that journey. And so when you take them out, then it becomes a much different ecosystem, because now those guys that were going draft league in don't really have a place to go. Some of them still will. Some of them will still wind up being either late season roster fillers on some of the top teams, or they'll wind up going and filtering into the Frontier League, or they'll do good in the camp and get somewhere else or whatever. But even then, that's far and few between. It's just not anything you can bank on. And as we've talked about in the past in the show, the pitching pipeline and the development pipeline has been something that's been really scarce lately. And so now you have less of a proving ground, which admittedly there were problems with finding pitching out of the Pioneer League. It's really hard to gauge, but at least you'd have a body of work to go off of. You'd have measurables, you'd have tape, you'd have guys that have had eyes on them where you can call and go, hey, what's the deal here? Is is what the measurable and what the stats say true? Or is it just like, hey, look, he played in Colorado Springs for half the season. Like, he's going to get lit up there. It's not a forgiving environment. It's a situation like that where now you've taken a critical development block out, and we've already seen what happens when the hose gets a kink in it. When you now create a whole knot in there, what's going to happen to the pipeline of talent going forward? Where are they going to get that development? Where are these teams going to get the players from? It turns into a whole big thing.
I have something for you.
Okay.
Would you, I think from our experience, can we agree that the gauge of the on-field health of a league, it could be sort of measured in the amount of runs per game, because that points to pitching depth issues, which is the number one flag that we deal with, and like parity in the league? That's fair?
Generally, I would agree with that.
Okay. So here's one for you. In the Pecos League this year, they are having on average, each offense is scoring 8.30 runs per game. In the Pioneer League this year, each offense is scoring 8.30 runs per game. The difference between the highest win percentage and the lowest is 0.574 in the Pioneer. It is 0.761. So it's wider, but that's because there's one team that's 8-43 in the Pecos. Oh, wait, no, hold on. There we go. Let me bump this. Actually, hold on.
I was gonna say 843 isn't that too dissimilar to the bottom?
No. So this year it's it's much minus.
Oh, that's not good.
It's 666. So they're 666, which means they're close to the level of parity, and they're doing that with more teams. 6, 11, like 16 teams.
More teams in crappier conditions generally, because a lot of them just play in a city park, with a quality of player that is dubious at best. And I will say, to just throw a little water on it, not great stat keeping. We know that's not great.
Agreed, but we're just talking runs per game, which is usually pretty as long as we get the scores. Yeah.
So generally, though, I see where you're going with this, and
so where I'm going is maybe the Pecos League is that middle ground, and I don't love that. And I'll also point to something, which is perhaps the pitching is better. Perhaps the hitting is just so bad right now in the Pecos League that they're losing steam. That's also potential. But I pay attention to the Pecos. I walk those streets. What I've been hearing for the past now 2 seasons is that there's been a significant step forward each year. So that's a different conversation entirely, but it is to say there is an alternative to the Pioneer League. We might not be expecting that. However, the Pecos League seems to have taken some things seriously. We have preached over and over again that they need to reduce. They need to stop with the random teams they're adding in. They have 2 teams inactive this season who are sort of, I guess, slated to be a problem. So they put them on hiatus, because you can do that when you own damn near every team. I don't love the way the Pecos does business, but the Pecos seems to be creeping up on the back end of the Pioneer League in a way that might concern the Pioneer League with the current situation they're in.
That is a reality that is deeply uncomforting.
I'm not saying that the quality of play is there, but I'm saying that the quality of play could easily reach that if Pioneer League players don't have anywhere to go.
You know what's sad about all of this here is that when you look at like some of the teams at the top of the standing board this year, you have 2 30-win teams and another 3 that aren't far behind. And you have Oakland that has won 12 straight, only 10 losses on the year. And I might be slightly off by this, but it won't be by much. I think they currently have the best record or winning percentage among the big 4.
I think they're over Quebec now. Yeah.
Yeah, because Quebec had a rough patch.
Yeah.
So we're talking about all these problems and the league falling apart instead of a team that's 23 games over 500 and won over 76% of the games and is currently on a 12-game heater. And that even if you were to take away all 12 of those games, they would still be at 21 wins and would still be what, 2, 4, 5, 6 best in the league. And if you took all 12 of them, made them losses, so they would be 21 and 22, they would just be a half game behind Rocky Mountain, who's lost 8 straight, which is a whole different problem. But they would still be in the upper half of this league. And
which is, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, which is, to me, one of the biggest tragedies of all of this, which is it takes away from the actual discussion of the players and the guys that are doing well in the good situations here. Like, thoughts about the general, feeling around the Oakland ownership and what their end game winds up being. They still have had on-field success.
They're doing the damn thing.
Things seem to be going good. And so, like, it's a very uneasy piece at the moment with that. But compared to what's around them, they seem to be doing pretty damn good. And they're at the very least getting results, getting some people in there, doing different things. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, we should be talking about, wow, they're doing really solid. They're about to clinch a playoff spot more than likely. Missoula's probably not far behind them. Yuba's played very good and very consistent. We should be talking about that. We should be talking about, what's the deal with Idaho Falls and Boise, near identical records, but they don't feel the same. And then Ogden getting hot and kind of pulling themselves back up, and Rocky Mountain having a real devil of a time lately. Like, that's the conversation we should be having about this upper half of the league, and at least standings wise, upper half. And it's kind of impossible to have that conversation when you look back at the past hour and change that we've just been talking about them for, where you can't ignore that, like, the business is genuinely that horrible and that horrific. And when you have to start factoring in, like, okay, well, is this team really that bad because they're not good, or are they losing, however many games in a row because they're not getting paid? So there's a lot less of an incentive to go out there when you're not being paid, and now you're struggling to either pay rent or buy food, And
it's also, go ahead.
Yeah, it starts to bleed in every other thing. And even in situations that we talked about in other leagues before, it's only ever really one team that's ever like, what's going on there? Is it difficult? Is it not? And you hear things about every other team, and it's like, they'll have one of these issues, and another team will have a different one of these issues, but it's never, several teams having the same group of issues like it is over here. And it's one thing if you have one issue to a lesser degree that's present in the Pioneer League. It's another thing entirely when it's dialed up on the degree and there's several of them present and it's kind of well spread. And then it just taints the whole conversation around them, because you're never sure, really, is this like a true to form? Like, this is the best teams, we are seeing the best product? Or is it just these teams that are doing well probably are among the better in the league, but their players know they got a place to sleep at night. They know their checks are going to be deposited on the 15th and 1st of every month. And they know that after the game, there's going to be food waiting for them. And it takes away a lot of concern.
I mean, even look at it. I mean, it's a good example of what's going on with Oakland right now, because Oakland, we should be talking about how they won 12 in a row, and, they're, handling business with Rocky Mountain.
And they
I posted it. I was like, I hate to take away from what Oakland's doing right now, but all I can think is, wow, this Rocky Mountain team is terrible. Like, they've just ripped 7 in a row off on them, and it's like, how many in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row. Yeah, 7 in a row. And it's like, damn, dude, like that team is 21 and 21, but if they didn't have those first 11 games with NOCO, they're 11 and 20, and the run differential is not good. So it's things like that, and you look at, like, no wonder guys aren't getting signed out of here at the same clip they used to be. If I'm an organization, I'm seeing guys put up numbers, I'm like, yeah, but against who in what situation? Like, you can't throw money at that, unfortunately, and it sucks. And it sucks too from that perspective. It sucks because like we should be gassing up the league and talking about how good this team is and how they're finally challenging Missoula here. Like, that's awesome. And it's just like anything but that conversation. It's frustrating.
Definitely is. So
we also need to consider the fact that potentially the state of Colorado is cursed because professional baseball teams in Colorado right now are 80 and 173 this season. That's highlighted by Rocky Mountain, by the way, 21 and 21. Though they did cost the state because they got so many of those wins against now Colorado Springs. But Grand Junction's 18-24. Colorado Springs is 8-33. The Rockies are 21-71. Rocky Mountain's 500, and then Trinidad is 12-24. So that's your 316 win percentage if you're a pro baseball team in Colorado.
It's a situation, and it's kind of really sad when you get down to that. There's no real other way to end this thing off. But I mean, the only other thing we really have to get to, there's obviously been news from over the weekend and from throughout the week that I think at this point we'll just get to on the main show because we've been going on about this for a while.
Yeah, my bad.
No, we both went on for it. But I want to give the news from the weekend and otherwise its own time to breathe. But I do think it is important to get to the Western Association bit, something I mentioned on the main show that we get to talk about. And it is, on the verge of being out of date. So I figure we'll talk about it now. And it is one of those other leagues that could a challenge for it. Quick little recap on the Western Association for those that remember. It was the third episode main topic. They were supposed to start a new league, and it was going to have 6 teams, I think, in there. It was all going to be American Southwest, and it just kind of never got off the ground. They announced 2 or 3 teams. I think it was the Henderson Who, and then one other one in Southern California, and nothing ever really worked out for them. And then kind of out of the blue, the day after No Code kind of imploded, they did implode. We got an announcement saying the Western Association is back on. They're going to aim to start a 78-game slate starting in June, ending in September. Plans to begin next year in 26. And over the next about 30 to 60 days, they're going to reveal all the teams that are in the league and what their identities are and all that goes along with it. It looks like we still have some of the original people still involved. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully better equipped this time. Obviously, too, in 2019, there was this little thing that started towards the end of the year that kind of, made life a little bit more difficult. But regardless, it's a curious little addition here, whether this turns into hey, it's going to usurp the Pioneer League, who's currently tripping over themselves, or it's just going to be a competitor to the Pecos League, or it's going to wind up being a nothing or a major thing. It is still another player in the region. It's still another professional baseball opportunity. And when you look at some of the names associated with the league, it does seem like they have some connection to baseball or independent league baseball the further down the rabbit hole you go.
From my perspective, I'm more interested in the role they'll fill in that sort of Pioneer League, Pecos League space, because I think that is what determines whether this league works. The big question that has to be solved here is what niche are you filling? They've already spoken to, they're kind of aiming for younger ball players, but they're open to older ones. While I like that it's very open, I am also concerned that they have not really narrowed down anything, which, sure, it's fine, but you're not the Atlantic League, so we'll see what we got. When it comes to when it comes down to it, they're going to have to figure out with on-field talent first and foremost, since I started there, where they fit, because the Pioneer League is grabbing mostly a lot of out of college guys, fresh out of college guys, people who kind of struggled through the frontier in the American Association, bouncing back down, young guys from out west, and putting generally pretty good talent out on the field. The Pecos League is now putting improved talent on the field, closing the gap that is between the Pioneer League and themselves, which really means there's a much more narrow gap if this league is looking to fill a talent space, unless, of course, they're trying to become a direct competitor or or improve upon the current offering. So that's something that I can't get a read on right now. But I will say, in detail, I'm not quite fully ready to go into. I have what we'll call a partial awareness of where this league will expand to. And I've done some recon on what ballparks that would mean potentially. And there is a spread from Division One, likely Division One ballparks, like nice Division One ballparks, to what I would call mid-tier Pecos ballparks, like when you talk to level wise, to like maybe a minor league quality ballpark. That does not, it is not about your worst, it is not about your best ballpark when it comes to your league status. It is typically about your worst. Yes. So that is concerning because I would say at least half of what I'm looking at, I would call Pecos League ballparks, potentially literally. And that makes me think, I mean, they're going to be a Pecos League competitor. And frankly, I mean, the Pecos League, again, for the second time today, I'll say, well, I'm not so sold on their business model. However, it's working. They're one of the longer running indie leagues. Like, they've been around. And, you know, we can say whatever we want to, and they have issues and they have ugly things that happen. And the Austin Weirdos were a thing that was a debacle. But they're going to towns, and for the most part, they're sticking. And they got guys that rally around their community. Community seems to sort of vibe with them. For the most part, it's going well. The talent level's improving. And I don't know that this is the time. I think, as funny as it is, I think this is the time to start a fight with the Pioneer League if you want. This is not the time to start something with the Pecos League, in my opinion. And unfortunately, they might think they're starting a fight with the Pioneer League. I don't know that for a fact. But I don't think they have what they need. I think they can meet the Pioneer League in the middle, potentially. Question mark, maybe. Possible solution. But I don't think they can compete with them, certainly from a facility standpoint. I doubt it from pay, though I am interested how player pay will be because they also have California teams. And if you've seen in the Pioneer League, that drives up minimum wage. But when it comes to it, I mean, I think, yeah, sure, they might have some facilities that are nicer than the Pecos League, but the Pecos League has their guys. They have repeat dudes now. Like, I'm not sure. Can all three leagues survive? Maybe. How much more can we water down that talent pool? Getting close. But yeah, man, I don't know.
Is it bad that I think out of every league to pick a fight with, not even the Pioneer League's number one or Pecos League, and they're not in the same market, so it's not picking a fight with them. But if you were to try to do this kind of new upstart thing, going after the Empire League feels like the time.
The Empire League's cooked, dude.
That's what I'm saying.
I will tell you, I had an eye-opening afternoon preseason with a bunch of the Black Sox guys. And this is not an official position of the Black Sox, so this is not me trying to start beat between the two. But it's just talking to a lot of guys who formerly played in the Empire League. And I was asking, like, oh, you're going back? And a bunch of them were like, hell no. It just sounds like it's just not. There's too small of a group running it right now. They are a bit of a circle at this point, and I don't think they are. They've fallen off, unfortunately. I mean, I think the USPBL is everything that the Empire League would like to be, and I think, unfortunately, I don't know if the Empire League is going to be able to bounce back. They got like a 15 that's like the LA whatever, the Los Angeles Bullies. They're doing the thing. They're trying to think that the USPBL did of like, oh, it's the Birmingham Beavers, and it's like, yeah, but you can't really make that work because they're a travel team. What are we doing? They're playing in parks. Managers are doing their best. They're not empowered to do a lot. The Empire League's cooked. You're right. This is the time to start with the Empire League, for sure. Honestly, that's a good read.
That's why it's like instead of being the Western Association, if you had the Eastern Association, I understand what the people involved, they don't want that. They want the markets they want. Fine, fair. But it just feels like if we were to dump that in the East, particularly like New England East, I feel like you could sell it a little bit easier. You get the populations that you could probably get in there. You have the talent pool that's still there. It's not like that area isn't rich in it. I understand the competition with summer college leagues is going to be more fierce. I get that.
True, but there is more of an openness to, for lack of a better term, random baseball leagues.
Exactly right. And the oddity factor is just a lot more appealing, where it's just like, let's see what this is. Like, what the hell could this possibly be? And you could really sell it on that. And it feels like, particularly with branding and marketing, it hits a little bit differently. Where it's like, if you can be kind of fun, kind of witty, and just like a little bit like rough, you could really buy a New England.
You got a bit of an edge to you.
Yeah. It's there's a respect there where you just like the Twitter account curses a little bit, where it's just like, oh hell yeah. Like that kind of sell. And I feel like there's enough ballparks in region that wouldn't really cut it in like the Frontier League or above, but there's no real like summer college team that makes sense for it, that you could do this kind of like dump them in there, play a 16 format and get in there. I don't necessarily know what the Western Association wants to do would work 1-for-1 in the East. I think there'd be a lot more challenges to that. But if you're going after the same talent pool and your plan is basically the top of the Empire League and guys that kind of wash out of the Frontier League, it's the place to go to get them because they're already there. And hey, if I don't have to go way across the country to a team that might not be playing my salary after saying they will, and deal with all the horror stories that people have become acquainted with certain Pecos League situations, so I get to stay where I am and not risk a bad situation for myself. Hey, that sounds like a win. I'll try this thing out for a little while, and who knows, maybe if I do well, I can get back to the Frontier League. And clearly with some of the people involved, they're well enough associated with people around indie ball, it could, make some sense. It's just a rough napkin idea. I have not worked that out, but it does feel like, to a degree, that's the place to go for it.
And just a couple parting thoughts, and then I have one more thing before we call the day here. The average, and this is something else, which is whether you're starting an indie ball team or an indie ball league, the hardest and biggest challenge is explaining to people what the hell you are, so they know what they're getting into. I've always said that's the biggest thing that Lexington messed up, is that there was just so much brand changing. And what league are we in? What is this? Was the and then the genomes? People had no idea what the hell was going on.
Urban Trail.
The average Pecos League team, because when we think of what the hell is this and inconsistency, we think of the Pecos.
Yeah.
The average Pecos League team has been in place in their town for about 8 years now. There's, whether it's super successful or not, they're there and people get what it is for the most part, right? And that's the problem, is like, even if you're going to one of these areas, like, even if you have a better product, it doesn't matter. The biggest, everyone thought the Legends were, it's a shame they lost affiliated, now I don't know, what's this, amateur baseball? And being like, dude, this is Courtney Hawkins. Like, this is, Brandon Phillips is out there today. Like, these like former major leaguers, first round picks, like tearing it up, and you had low A ball. What are you talking about? It's still, they couldn't shake it. And that's going to be the continued challenge, no matter where you are, no matter what league you are. And if you're trying to take on even the Pecos, seeing them as an easy target, perhaps in certain markets, you're going to have that issue. And that is just jog memory on that, based on like the familiarity of the Northeast with like random leagues. And do you have anything else on this before we move on? It's more of a wait and see, I guess, at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the thing. Like, for the amount of information we have and the kind of beat and switch we've gotten in the past with this, it is curious to see. I mean, Henderson being back in there is great, but if I recall right, like, their last plan for his stadium wasn't exactly awe-inspiring. So, that is something there. I'd like to see some more.
Yeah, I think they're playing a local college is my vibe.
So it's the same like Central Nevada school.
Mhm. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's encouraging. So I would like to see more concrete plans, no doubt.
Mhm.
I'd like to see a more fleshed out leadership plan and like show me your rules, show me something more concrete to really go off of.
Mhm.
And then really before I want to take them seriously and spend time discussing them and like deep diving them, I want to see some sort of kind of commitment to it, to in which it's going to be financially painful for all involved to back out of this. Not impossible, but it's going to hurt to do it.
Yes, agreed. Yeah,
So,
it can't be easy to drop. I agree.
Yeah.
On that topic, I had one quick thing. This is more of a request to our listeners because I've been thinking on something for a while, and it's like half baked in my head, and it's not going anywhere. Let's be honest about it. But like I've been thinking a lot about like if I were to start a league today, how would I do it? And as far as I've gotten is sort of a mix of crazy and uncrazy concepts, and I think it's all the things we always talk about. Got to be customer engagement and service based. Like got to be like very like no matter what the day is, no matter if there's great play on the field, bad play on the field, or rain out on the field, the value has to present itself in a way that there's no doubt that it's worth coming back again, and that you had a great time, so that you don't even have the question of whether you want to or not. And there's that whole aspect. I continually bounce back to the model of what the USPBL has going on with 4 teams in the ballpark, lower overhead, as long as you can house everybody and keep that going. Even the vibe of if you got to move players from team to team, you can kind of make that work between teams with minimal expense, no travel costs, all that. Everyone knows where to go. You can kind of come up with some fun brands, tons of merch, move it like that. And then my bold thought was doing Friday night, having a game, Saturday doubleheader, Sunday doubleheader. And then, so like 4 teams in the league type of thing. So everyone's getting games on the weekend. And then my weird idea went to taking what to do about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? Where it's just low, usually low attendance, low money, right? Yeah, but you're not going to get a serious league that just plays Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's just really hard to do. My thought was whether it's like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Wednesday, Thursday, or even Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it is a stripped down version of the game presentation, minimal staff, minimal concessions available, still top-notch customer service, still like doing all with that, but it's minimal. It is clear you're not getting the full show, which is understood because it's free. Mm-hmm. That would be the thought process, especially in the summer where you can get away with less light usage and all that. And then that way you can keep costs down and really lean into the full show, giving people that like almost the off the field Savannah Bananas bit with good baseball. And that's the elevator pitch in so many words that I have for if anyone ever asked me how would you start a league right now? There is no reason the league could not then expand to multiple ballparks, but it's just in the interest of how would you do it right now to minimize cost. That would be my method for doing it. So what I'm saying is if anyone's listening and has any thoughts on that, it's like, you're an idiot, or, hey, there's something to that, here's how you could actually build on that, hit me up, Indie Ball Nation, on whatever the hell you like to use, or email me, and if you have my email. Anyway, these are my thoughts.
I want to respond to that. I want to have a coherent thought to respond to that because it's interesting. I do wonder the overhead of operating at free cost there, but I do also wonder at the same time that are you going to make up at least a portion of it from people that get them for free and go, well, I already got this for free, I could afford to buy some stuff.
That's the thing. It has to be so good, because the idea is, why would anybody go pay when they can go for free? The idea is the free thing. Why would anybody pay for anything that they get for free, like streaming platforms as an example? Because you see a little bit of it and you go, ooh, this was good, I want the rest of it. I want to see the full thing. And then it's there. And like, also, I love the idea of like just minimizing the first timer risk. You're like, do I want to pay for this? I don't know what I'm getting into, yada, yada. Like maybe I have a bunch of kids who might not even be ready to hang out at a baseball game full night. Am I about to waste a bunch of money? Come on for free. have a time, whatever. Maybe even you can bring your own food to those games. That might be the move. Got to limit beverages coming in because you don't want people just bringing in a water bottle full of vodka like it's high school or college, depending on how your childhood was.
It is interesting. So I do wonder about that. I do wonder too. See, the problem that I come back to with that is like it feels like a lot for the operating expenses. It feels like if you're going to do that as your option, you gotta really appeal to a day crowd as opposed to a night crowd. Because the second you gotta flick those lights on, it gets real expensive really quick. Those lights aren't cheap. See, my thought went to there's another version of the game that you play during the week. And then you play it straight on the weekend. But then I just don't love how that confuses people.
I agree. Yeah, no, I don't love that, but I understand what you mean.
And
and I think maybe it's the weeknights you hyper market it to local little leagues. You know, maybe it is paid, but you know, you're giving out a lot of tickets, you know, and drawing in fans for that stuff.
I was thinking you could do like the museum option of like the museum's free, but there's an optional donation of, and you pick some sort of local charity cause for that. People still, if you want to give, you can. If not, that's fine too. You know,
pay what you want and then split it 50-50 between us and local charity.
That's what I'm thinking. That was the next spot I was going to say, was you have some sort of a split. That helps cover some expense there. People feel like they are obligated to give there. It helps out with that cause, and you look good in the community. Could be the thing here, and whatever money you do as a weekly running thing here. So you get the money from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then say either Friday night or Saturday night in between the two games, you go ahead, you bring out whoever's their, you know, representative for said charity, give them a big paper check or whatever with the money, have them out to the ballpark. If you can afford to give them a box, if you have that as an option at your ballpark, not all of them have it, but most have them now. I mean, if you don't, you're really giving up revenue. If you can afford to give it to them, then you bring that out there, and maybe the charity representative for the following week, but I don't want to step on toes and crowd everything. So if you want to do that, you could do that on the Sunday in between, so that way people can go ahead and hear the thing. And, you know, if you're either a season ticket holder or someone that likes to go to games, there's just like, we're not doing anything on it. We go during the week type of thing. You know what you're representing, and you get some clips and social media pieces.
Doesn't even always have to be charities. It can be local little leagues. It can be local schools. And then they're promoting, hey, come out on these nights. You can donate. It's free ball game, donate, and half of the money comes back to us. You know, it is the, how do you maximize the days when people are looking to go to a game while minimizing the hit you're going to take on the other days? You know, and ideally maximizing those days, but at worst minimizing the hit.
Yeah. I mean, really the biggest issue I have with those ideas is simply that if this is someone's first time going to a game, you want it to be the best possible and not a stripped down version of it. But there's just something about not putting the best effort forward every time that feels wrong, even if it makes sense.
Well, it's not so I agree, but I would also counter that it's not a question of effort. Like the where we meet the fans and how we interact with them and what we're offering them is still max effort and max energy. It's just a slightly different product. And I would almost compare it to, you know, that was your first banana ball experience. The bananas weren't there, but you had a great time. And we're talking about on the way out, like, yeah, I got to get you out to see like the bananas.
Fair.
You know, sort of a little more similar to that, you know, not necessarily you can walk in for free. Like I get that, but
I agree with the example, but I would still argue that like you call it a different product. I call it an inferior product though. And so do you want someone's first experience with your product to be the inferior of the two?
It's the free product though. I mean,
it's fair, but even still the impression that's left there, if you're like, it was kind of underwhelming, how good could the paid one really be? Is the other flip side of it.
Well, that's it. I mean, the name of the game is how do we express in that free game, express enough about who we are and what we're bringing that people go, damn, I'm in on this. Like I'm confident in coming back and spending a bunch of money on this. And again, a lot of the free is going to be just repeat customers from the weekend already. like people who will typically come out and pay as well, and they're just into it and they're going to show up. Which also steps slightly toward my belief in not nickel and diming families and friends type of thing too. Like, you're coming out Tuesday night, like I'm making sure, like obviously they'll probably get comp tickets anyway, but still it's, it's a good vibe to just, I don't know. I think that's a way to go about it.
So,
and again, the things we're cutting is, the on-field, like in between inning stuff is still the same. It's the entertainment stuff still the same. The stuff that's being cut back a little bit is like the concessions to the point that it makes sense to the attendance, and like then sort of odds and ends from there. No grounds crew. We have a dog that pulls one of that just drags the field. Yeah, it's great. He's excited. He gets to pull a rope. It's super cool.
So it really seems like two things. One, that we shouldn't be selling subscriber memberships for $30 a month, and two, that as with everything,
YouTube for sure, boys.
As with everything, and really could be the theme of this whole episode, it comes down to personnel. And if you don't have the right personnel, you're kind of dead in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and part of that, we can go right back to the bananas thing. I mean, a lot of it's having the right people to make something work. It is a unique thing that I would say on the quote slow nights, which would be the weeknights, compared to the weekends, require more effort on the weeknights in order to earn the weekend, essentially. Once again, I'm available if you want to hire me for the stupidest league you've ever seen.
I was just saying, we have a new league that we discussed here, and undoubtedly have people from said league that will eventually stumble across this, because it just seems like we force scump our way into league offices more often than not. So,
dude, I got a shot in the buttock.
So here's what I'm thinking: for scump night.
Where the same dude's just everywhere the entire time. Big sack fly. Look who's there taking the cutoff.
Or you just have one guy, he just up like Forrest, he goes around to the ballpark, just random places in the ballpark all night long. Specialty item of the week has some sort of fried shrimp.
Probably get bubblegum shrimp out there for a cross promo.
Oh, you probably could. And I guarantee you can go ahead and, dude, Forrest Company could work for Sussex really well too, because they have Mars Candy right in Hackettstown, and you could definitely partner with them to give away candy at the front gate.
I mean,
small box of chocolates at the gate.
We can probably get Tom Hanks to show up if we tell him there's an opportunity to like play the role of some random citizen, because I think he's on that quest to play every living U.S. citizen in a movie before he dies. I think that's his career. I don't know.
He's also a baseball fan. We've seen him keeping score before. This is definitely doable, but we do.
No crying, but you'll be fine.
He may cost too much. We have to settle for like Colin or the other Hanks.
Oh, they're playing baseball, man.
This has been a tremendous indie ball after dark.
Ground ball. So Irie, how'd you get your dreadlocks so tight there? Feel the rhythm. Okay, I'm done.
So that concludes the Indie Ball After Dark bonus episode for the week. At Indie Ball Pod on Twitter, Indie Ball Report, everywhere else, Indie Ball Nation, literally everywhere. Obviously, we did not mention a couple of the bigger news stories from the week. We will have a whole piece on Bobby next week. If you want to add to that, if you have anything you want to say, send it to me. Audio file will be preferred, and I will try to work it into the show if you feel so inclined to send something like that. So, yeah, we'll leave it with that for now, so that way we can give it the appropriate time and space. So that's the bonus episode for you. New one will go up on Saturday. So until next time, don't forget to